Once upon a time, the village gathered to celebrate Udoka's wedding. But the joyous occasion turned into a nightmare when he screamed in agony, clutching his stomach. Moments later, to everyone's horror, a snake emerged from him, its golden eyes glowing with an ancient curse. The villagers recoiled in fear, and whispers of dark ancestral sins spread like wildfire. Now, Udoka must confront a terrifying truth. His bloodline carries a deadly secret, and the price for redemption may cost him everything. The wedding drums had barely stopped echoing when the most unthinkable event unfolded. Udoka lay on the floor of his chambers. Drenched in sweat, his hands gripped his stomach as waves of pain coursed through his body. The midwife, Inoma, stood frozen at the doorway, her eyes wide with disbelief. And then it happened. Udoka let out a brutal scream, and from his body, a serpent emerged, slithering across the cold, earthen floor. The room fell silent. The snake was small, but its presence was enormous. Its black gleaming scales shimmered in the dim light of the oil lamp, and its golden eyes seemed to carry ancient wisdom. It coiled itself neatly near the corner of the room, as if waiting for something. Udoka gasped for air, his body trembling. What is this?" he stammered. Norma took a step back, clutching her beads. "The gods!" she whispered. "Have spoken. The village must quickly be alerted." People gathered outside the hut, their murmurs growing louder with each passing second. The elders arrived, their faces grim, their walking sticks tapping against the ground in unison. Elder Obiora, the oldest and most respected in the village, entered the room. His eyes scanned the scene, the snake, Udoka, and the horrified midwife. He spoke slowly, his voice heavy with authority. "Udoka," he said, "this is no ordinary event. A man giving birth is an abomination. But the snake, it speaks of an ancient curse." Udoka shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I don't understand. I have done nothing to anger the gods." Elder Obiora raised his hands. "Silence! There is more to this than you know." The crowd outside grew restless. Whispers of curses, spirits, and forbidden rituals filled the air. The women clutched their children close, while the men exchanged wary glances. Meanwhile, the snake remained still, its golden eyes fixed on Udoka. "Take it to the shrine," Elder Obiora commanded. "We must consult the oracle." Two men stepped forward, carrying the snake carefully in a woven basket. As they left, the elders turned to Udoka. "You must prepare yourself," they said. "This is only the beginning." Udoka's bride, Adanna, stood at the doorway, her face pale. She had been waiting for him to join her, to celebrate the start of their life together. Now, all she saw was fear and uncertainty. Udoka looked at her, his heart heavy. He could not speak, for he had no answers. As the night deepened, the village waited in suspense. What had begun as a day of joy was now a night of terror. The truth behind the serpent's birth would unravel secrets long buried, and the lives of everyone in the village would change forever. Alright guys, if at this point you find the story interesting and you're enjoying it, please do well to subscribe Also turn on your post notification buttons. Click on the like button and let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Alright, let's continue. The air in Umoke village was thick with fear and uncertainty. Word of Udoka's bizarre ordeal spread faster than wildfire. By dawn, every man, woman, and child knew that a snake had emerged from the groom on his wedding day. In the marketplace, traders paused their dealings. The blacksmiths abandoned their anvils. Even the children, usually carefree, whispered in hushed tones. "Is it true?" a woman asked, her voice trembling as she approached the Norma. "Did Udoka truly birth a snake?" Norma nodded solemnly. "I saw it with my own eyes." Gasps erupted. Some crossed themselves, others spat on the ground to ward off evil. The elders convened under the ancient Iroko tree, their faces shadowed by its thick canopy. Elder Obiora stood in the center, his gaze grave. "This is no ordinary event," he said. "The gods do not act without reason. We must seek answers before discourse consumes us all." Elder Ifeanyi, known for his skepticism, stroked his beard. "Perhaps this is not the work of the gods, but a trick by dark forces. We need to tread carefully." At that moment, Udoka and Adanna approached the gathering. Udoka's face was pale, his steps hesitant. Adanna held his hand tightly, her own fear marked by determination. "Elders," Udoka began, his voice hoarse, "I need answers. Why has this happened to me?" Obiora motioned for them to sit. "Patience, my son. The oracle will reveal the truth." The shrine stood at the edge of the village, where the dense forest began. Its entrance was marked by tall wooden carvings of the gods, their faces fierce and unyielding. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the sound of distant drums filled the silence. Udoka, Adanna, and the elders gathered before the oracle, a frail woman named Agbala. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp and piercing. She sat cross-legged, surrounded by cowrie shells and sacred stones. "The gods have spoken," she began without preamble. "This snake is no ordinary creature. It carries a message." She cast the cowries onto the mat before her, studying their pattern. Her brows furrowed. "There is a cause," she said finally, her voice low and somber. "It was placed on your bloodline many years ago, long before you were born, Udoka." Udoka's heart sank. "A curse? What did we do to deserve this?" Agbala closed her eyes, as though peering into the past. "Your great-grandfather wronged the spirit of the forest. He made a promise to the gods, but failed to fulfill it. Now the debt must be paid." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Promises made to the gods were never to be taken lightly. "But why now?" Adanna asked. "Why on our wedding day?" Agbala's eyes snapped open. "Because the union of two souls is powerful. It stirs the spirit, awakening what has long been dormant. The curse was rekindled to remind us that it remains unbroken." Udoka clenched his fist. "How do we end it?" Agbala picked up a small gourd and shook it rhythmically. "The snake is the key. You must take it back to the forest, where your ancestor made his vow. Only there can the curse be lifted." The room fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on everyone. Elder Obiora spoke at last. "We will accompany you, Udoka. This is a journey you must not undertake alone." Udoka nodded, determination replacing his fear. "Then we leave at dawn." As the villagers returned to their homes, preparing for the journey, a strange wind swept through Umoke. It was neither cold nor warm, but it carried a whisper, a warning from the spirit that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. And so the stage was set. The journey to break the curse would begin, but no one could predict what they would encounter in the depth of the forest. At dawn, the village gathered near the edge of the forest. A procession formed. Udoka, Adanna, Elder Obiora, and 2 young warriors, Ekene and Chidi, chosen for their strength and courage. The snake, still resisting in the woven basket, was carried by Ekene. Its golden eyes remained unblinking, as though it understood the gravity of the journey. Before they set off, Elder Obiora performed a brief ritual. He poured libation onto the ground from a calabash filled with palm wine, invoking the protection of the gods. The villagers chanted softly, their voices blending with the rustling of the forest leaves. But as the ritual neared its end, something strange happened. The calabash in Obiora's hand cracked, splitting cleanly in two. The palm wine spilled onto the earth, soaking the ground. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. "The gods are restless," whispered an old woman. "This journey will not be easy." Elder Obiora's face darkened. "We must go, curse or not." He gestured for the group to move. The villagers watched in silence as the travelers disappeared into the forest. Back in the village, life tried to resume its rhythm, but the events of the wedding day lingered like a shadow. The market, usually bustling with chatter and laughter, was subdued. The traders spoke in whispers, their eyes darting towards the forest as if expecting something to emerge. It was here that a peculiar figure appeared, a man with a long, withered face and a walking stick adorned with charms. His clothes were simple, yet he carried an air of authority. He moved slowly, pausing at each stall, asking quiet questions. "Who is he?" A fishmonger muttered to her neighbor. "I don't know, but he doesn't look like he's from here," came the reply. The man eventually stopped at Inoma's store. She was arranging medicinal herbs when he spoke. "You were at the wedding," he said, his voice deep and measured. Inoma looked up, startled. "Yes, I was." "And you saw the snake?" She hesitated but nodded. "I did." The man leaned on his stick, his eyes narrowing. "Then you must know that this is not just a curse. It is a test." The gods watched closely. Norma frowned. "Who are you? And how do you know of these things?" The man did not answer her question. Instead, he said, "If they fail, the curse will spread beyond Udoka's family. The entire village will bear the burden." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Inoma with more questions than answers. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, chirping birds, rustling leaves, and the occasional cry of a distant animal. The travelers walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Adanna broke the silence. Udoka, did your family ever speak of this cause? Udoka shook his head. Never. My father died when I was young, and my mother never mentioned anything about a broken promise. Elder Obiora sighed. Many secrets are buried with the dead. It's possible that your mother kept this from you to protect you. As they pressed deeper into the forest, the paths became more treacherous. Vines and roots threatened to strip them, and the dense foliage blocked out much of the sunlight. Chidi, who had been scouting ahead, suddenly stopped. Elder Obiora, there's something you need to say. The group hurried forward to find Chidi standing before an ancient stone altar, half covered in moss. On it was a carving of a snake entwined around a tree. Beneath it lay a shattered clay pot, its fragments scattered. Elder Obiora knelt, his fingers tracing the carving. This is the place, he muttered, the site of the broken vow. Udoka stared at the altar, a chill running down his spine. What do we do now? Obiora stood. We must perform a ritual of atonement, but first, we need the guidance of the spirit. Ekene opened the basket, revealing the snake. It uncoiled itself and slithered towards the altar, stopping at its base. It raised its head, its golden eyes glinting in the dim light. Adanna whispered, "It knows where it belongs." Obiora nodded. "Prepare yourselves. The spirit will test us before they grant forgiveness." The group set to work, gathering herbs and sacred stones for the ritual. But as they prepared, unseen eyes watching from the shadows of the forest, something or someone was waiting. The ancient forest seemed to grow darker as the group walked. Every rustling leaf and distant cry of an animal felt amplified, as though the forest itself was alive and aware of their presence. Elder Obiora arranged the sacred stones in a circle around the altar, while Adanna placed the herbs inside. Udoka stood silently, watching the snake as it lay motionless at the altar's base. "The gods will speak through signs," Obiora said, his voice steady. "We must be ready to interpret them." Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew through the clearing, extinguishing their lantern. The group froze as a deep, low growl echoed from somewhere in the forest. "What is that?" Adanna whispered, her grip tightening on Udoka's arm. Ekene and Chidi instinctively reached for their machetes. The forest has grown unnervingly quiet, and the usual sounds of insects and birds were gone. Obiora held up his hand. "Do not be afraid. This is the forest's way of testing our resolve. If you falter, we risk failure." Udoka nodded. Though his heart raced, he took a deep breath and stepped closer to the altar. "I am ready." Obiora began chanting in a low voice, calling upon the ancestors and the gods to reveal their will. The wind picked up again, swirling around them, but this time it carried whispers. Udoka strained to listen. The whispers grew louder, forming words that only he could hear. The debt must be paid in full. The blood of the past cries for justice. Udoka shivered. "What does it mean?" he asked aloud, his voice breaking. Obiora opened his eyes, his expression grave. "The gods demand that you confront the sins of your ancestor directly. Only then will they decide if you are worthy of forgiveness." As Obiora's chant ended, the snake began to move. It slithered upon the altar, its golden eyes growing brighter. The group watched in tense silence as the serpent coiled itself around the carved tree symbol. Then a loud crack split the air. The ground beneath the altar trembled and a hidden passageway opened. A dark tunnel stretched downward, its entrance lit faintly by an airy green light. "The trials begin here," Obiora said. He turned to Udoka. "You must enter alone." Adanna clutched Udoka's hand. "No, he can't go by himself." Obiora's face was firm. "The gods will only accept him. This is his burden to bear." Udoka looked at Adanna, his eyes filled with both fear and determination. "I have to do this for us, for the village." She nodded reluctantly, tears brimming in her eyes. "Be careful." Udoka stepped towards the tunnel, his heart pounding. As he descended into the darkness, the forest above seemed to hold its breath. The tunnel walls were damped and covered in strange markings. The green light grew stronger as he moved deeper, guiding him to a cavernous chamber. At the center of the chamber stood a figure, cloaked in shadows. "Who are you?" Udoka called out, his voice echoing. The figure stepped forward, revealing an old man with piercing eyes and a snake carved into his walking stick. "I am Okoro, your great-grandfather," the man said, his voice heavy with regret. "You seek to undo what I have done." Udoka's eyes widened. "You are the one who made the vow?" Okoro nodded. "I was a proud man, and I thought I could outwit the gods. I promised them a life in exchange for power, but failed to deliver. Now our bloodline suffers." Udoka clenched his feet. "Then help me fix it. Tell me what I must do." Okoro pointed to a stone pedestal in the center of the chamber. On it lay a ceremonial dagger and a small clay jar. "You must choose," he said. "One will break the curse, and the other will bind it forever." Udoka approached the pedestal, his mind racing. The whispers returned, louder this time, filling the chamber with conflicting voices. "Choose wisely," Okoro warned, "for the wrong choice will doom us all." Udoka stared at the dagger and the jar, his hands trembling. The whispers from the walls became deafening, each one offering a different piece of advice. The dagger, one voice said, "Use it to spill blood and appease the gods." The jar, another encountered, "Pour its content to cleanse your bloodline." Udoka closed his eyes, trying to silence the chaos. He thought of Adanna, the village, and the future they had barely begun to build. He knew that his decision would not only determine his fate, but the fate of everyone he loved. He opened his eyes and reached out. Udoka's hand hovered over the ceremonial dagger for a moment, but his instinct pulled him towards the clay jar. The voices in the chamber seemed to grow louder, some hissing in anger, others murmuring in approval. His fingers closed around the jar's cold surface. Okoro's expression remained unreadable. "You have made your choice. Now open it." With trembling hands, Udoka lifted the lid. A dense dark mist spilled out, filling the chamber with the scent of earth and decay. The mist swirled around him, coalescing into shapes, images from the past. He saw Okoro standing before the same altar, bargaining with the gods. He watched as Okoro promised the life of his firstborn in exchange for wealth and power. But the image shifted, showing how Okoro fled into the forest, clutching his infant son, refusing to fulfill his end of the bargain. Udoka's heart sank as the vision faded. The gods had been betrayed, and his family had borne the weight of that betrayal ever since. Suddenly, the mist condensed into a single figure, a towering snake-headed deity with scales as black as night. Its golden eyes looked into Udoka, and its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Do you seek to end the curse?" the deity asked. Udoka swallowed hard, but stood his ground. "Yes, I want to free my family and my village from this burden." The deity leaned closer, its breath warm and humid. "To break the curse, a sacrifice must be made. Life must balance life." Udoka's heart pounded. He knew what the deity meant. "Whose life?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The deity didn't answer directly. Instead, it gestured towards the jar. "Within lies the essence of the one who wronged us, who must destroy it. But be warned, the act will cost you greatly." Udoka stared at the jar. He understood now. Breaking the curse would mean severing his connection to his ancestor Okoro forever. The sacrifice wasn't just about blood. It was about lineage, legacy, and memory. "Do you accept?" the deity asked. Udoka, hesitant for only a moment before nodding. "I accept." With a deep breath, Udoka raised the jar above his head. Okoro's face twisted in a mixture of fear and sorrow. "Wait!" he cried. "If you destroy the jar, you erase me from existence. I will be forgotten forever." Udoka's grip faltered. "You brought this curse upon us," he said, his voice shaking. "It's time to set things right." Okoro's phone began to flicker, his voice desperate. "I did wrong, but I am still part of you. Without me, your identity will be incomplete. Do you truly wish to lose a piece of yourself?" Udoka closed his eyes. Summoning his courage, he thought of Adanna, his future children, and the village. They deserve a life free of this curse. "I choose freedom," he said, and with all his strength, he hauled the jar onto the stone floor. The jar shattered, and a blinding light filled the chamber. The mist screamed, swelling violently before it was sucked back into the cracks of the earth. The snake-headed deity let out a satisfied hiss before dissolving into the air. Okoro's form flickered one last time. "I am sorry," he whispered before he vanished into the void. The chamber fell silent. The oppressive weight that had hung over Udoka lifted, replaced by a profound stillness. When Udoka emerged from the tunnel, the others rushed to him. Adanna threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she said. "The curse is gone." Udoka nodded, though his heart was heavy with the loss of Okoro. "It's over," he said softly. Elder Obiora studied him closely. "The forest feels lighter. The gods have accepted your sacrifice." As the group made their way back to the village, the air seemed fresher, the light brighter. The villagers greeted them with the cheers and the relief, their fear replaced with hope. That night, a great feast was held to celebrate the lifting of the curse. Udoka and Adanna sat together, their hands intertwined, knowing that their future was now theirs to shape. Years later, Udoka would tell his children the story of the snake and the curse. He would teach them the importance of keeping promises and the dangers of pride. The village of Umoke thrived, and the tale of Udoka's journey became a legend, passed down through generations as a reminder of the power of redemption and the price of freedom. In the end, the lesson was clear. The past may shape us, but it is our choices that define who we become. Thank you so much for getting this far with us. If you truly enjoyed this story, let me know what your comments and your thoughts are in the comment section. Please like this video, subscribe, and turn on your post notification buttons. And also do not forget to share with your friends and family. Bye for now. See you in the next video.